Oh, good evening and welcome to Be More Super Live. We're normally live on a Wednesday, but we're making one exception because we've got something exciting on the show very, very shortly. How are you, Dan?
I'm absolutely exhausted, mate, and this recording on a Tuesday has absolutely sent me for a bag of chips. But I'm all right. I'm okay. I'm okay.
Which, you know what? We have got things to light up your eyes very, very soon because we've got our sponsors from Propstore with us. But before we hand over to the lovely Chuck from Propstore, just a reminder that tomorrow at 8 o'clock, we've got the phenomenal Chelsea Harris from Snowpiercer, Maverick, Designated Survivor. She's going to be live with us from 8 o'clock. And the following week, we've got Samantha Russell as well from a new film that's doing the festival circuit at the moment called Auntology. Join us for next week on the 14th at 8 o'clock. But let's talk about this amazing event that's happening very, very soon, which is the Propstore Entertainment Memorabilia Live Auction. And of course, Prop Stores are our amazing sponsors, so we couldn't do this show without Prop Store. So when we get a chance to get them on, and especially the LA branch, it's always a treat to talk to our, fellow friends over the pond. So let's get our guest on to talk about the lovely upcoming auction. It's a wonderful. Chuck, how are you, sir?
I'm doing lovely. Thank you guys for taking time on Tuesday. I know it's not your normal day, so thanks for joining us here in Los Angeles. The weather is steamy here in Los Angeles for those that are over on the other side of the pond. We're enjoying all of summer, but it's supposed to cool down. We've gotten over 100 and I think out here in Valencia, it's gotten up to like 113 degrees, if that makes you feel any better. And that's Fahrenheit, not Celsius, but yeah.
Do you know what? It's very hot in the UK as well. We're not designed for the heat in the UK. We're designed for muggy days, a bit of rain, and that's it. So, I can only imagine in the wonderful LA, the weather must be absolutely glorious. But we're here to talk about an auction, an amazing auction.
Yes.
In each year, many times a year now, you do quite a few auctions throughout the year, but they get better and better. And this auction is going from the 14th of August to the 18th. And you're here, Chuck.
Well, technically, it's the 15th to the 18th, actually. The 14th is our preview event at the Peterson Automotive Museum. So if you're here in Los Angeles, you get a little bit of a sneak peek on the 14th, but the actual bidding goes live. The live action happens at the Peterson starting on the 15th. So don't tune in too early. You'll tire yourself out.
So on the 14th, if you do want to go to the preview event, you have Q from Star Trek attending as well, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, Star Trek, and we'll talk a little bit about Star Trek in just a bit. But as we looked at the items in this auction, we said, we've got some of the most amazing items all the way from the beginning of Star Trek, all the way through present day Star Trek. And we wanted to celebrate that. And we said, who's better to talk about everything that's happened in the Star Trek universe, at least since Next Generation, than Q, because he's been on all the different series. He's jumped around in the universe and sort of brought different people together. So we thought John Delancey would be the perfect guest, and he'll be doing a QA. He'll be doing some signings. He'll even be taking pictures with people over there. So if you can make it, go to propstore.com. You can still sign up for the VIP preview event. There's a little section on our landing page for this auction where you can do that. And we'd love to see you there.
Excellent. And I am sure there's people screaming at the screen right now, pointing at things on your wonderful desk in front of you. So where shall we start? I mean, I want to take all of them home. I don't know if the wife would let me, but I want to take them all home. What about you, Dan?
Well,
yeah, I'm eyeing up about 4 or 5 things that I can see now, and I know he's about to unveil something that I just want to steal. Like, you know what I mean? I just want it in and around my house, something that I can use as like a coffee table or something a lot more respectful.
Well, yes, we are about to reveal something. So similar to Star Trek, let's start at the beginning of the alphabet. We'll actually start with B, which is B for Batman. We've got a number of different items from the Batman franchise. Some on this table. We'll come back to those in just a second. But let's go back to the beginning of at least the Batman movie franchise and go to 1989. And we're going to reveal one of the key pieces that we've got in the auction here, which is our 1989 animatronic 6-foot-long Batwing. This is the Batwing. This is the, everybody remembers the sequence at the end where Batman is coming head to head with the Joker. Joker's releasing his balloons into the city, and Batman has to go use the Batwing to, well, first fly up into the moon and then go capture the balloons and bring them to safety before all the gases explode into Gotham City. And this is the thing that did it. They actually built this, I believe, is the only animatronic. There may have been some smaller ones that were made for the movie, but this is the large size one that they had built for the film. And we're going to show you some of the cool functionality of this. Now, a little bit of backstory on this. This was sitting in a restaurant for a number of years. It was then reconditioned back to its original state. It had gotten some grease and grime on it over the years. It's been cleaned up. It's been repainted. And the original, you'll see some of the animatronics were done using pneumatic tubes, so air. And so they've been retrofitted to modern day standards so that we can run it with electrical. And so we will show you some of that great functionality. So the interesting thing about this ship is that most of the working electronics are on the left side of the ship. And the reason for that is that's where they were filming from. So as they were, framing up the shots, you'll notice that you don't see the back of the Batwing. And the reason for that is that's the mounting point for the Batwing. And then also for the animatronics, they built all the animatronics on the left-hand side because, they don't want to necessarily build it twice. But my friend Ryan, who is off camera here, but we'll give him credit if you ever call into Propstore. You've probably dealt with Ryan before. He's very, very kind and nice and deals with a lot of our customer service calls, but he also knows how to operate a Batwing. So we'll show you some of the functionality. First, the flap over on the side, up and down. There you go. That's probably the most basic functionality. And then let's show the missiles coming out of the back of the Batwing. Look at that. In and out. Wow. And then maybe something a little bit fancier. Let's get the Gatling gun out. Now, this is kind of neat. So you have to first release the Gatling gun, get it out, and then it rotates and fires. And then you've got the lights that go in conjunction with that, giving that illusion that it's firing bullets out into the street. And then we've got additional lights that are in the front as well as the sides of the Batwing. Look at that.
Wow.
And then, hey, Batman's looking to see what's going on. He looks to the right. He looks to the left.
Michael Keaton's a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be, actually.
He's got limited in that movement as well. He can only move left to right, but it allowed to give that illusion, so they didn't actually have to put Michael Keaton in this. And then for the final sequence, here come the balloons. Let's go ahead and grab them, Ryan. So the clippers come out. And if you look at the detail here, the gold part of the top of this is actually made in a bat shape. You don't get to see that in the film, but that's really cool when you actually see that up close and personal. But these clippers come out, grab the balloons, take them back in, and then there's a saw in there as well that can be used.
That is absolutely stunning. I mean, these kind of pieces, they must not come around that often. I mean, how rare is it? I mean, did you say it's the only one that's known to exist?
We believe it's the only one that was made, and it took a lot of work to build this thing. So there were a few Batmobiles, but only one Batwing, and then you can see why. And it was really only used for one major sequence at the end of the '89 film, and then it wasn't used again in the future movies. So obviously they didn't have to build a new Batwing every movie like they did with Batmobiles. But it's just a classic piece, and I think the '89 Batman started it all, but also stands on its own as probably the at least in my opinion, the best of the Batman movies there. So amazing piece.
I completely agree. It's one of my favorite. I can remember going to the cinema to watch it, and Michael Keaton will always be my Batman. And that is starting from a price of $125,000.
See, that's a lot cheaper than I thought it was going to be. I thought this.
I like to hear that.
Dan,
I like to hear that.
Get your wallet out, Dan. Get your wallet out.
Yeah, it sounds like you're ready to write a check at this point. No, it's estimated. I think we expect it to go $250,000 to $500,000, which is still in the scheme of things. We've got some other large scale models. We've got, if you look through the catalog, we've got the full size Nostromo from the very first Alien. Which what I like about the Batwing, great pieces. The Batwing, even though it's 6 feet long and it's large, it still will fit in most people's houses, and you don't necessarily have to worry about bumping up against it. With the Nostromo, you've got some very delicate pieces that are on that. Excuse me. And you have to worry a little bit more about that and keep that in a museum type environment. But the Batwing, you can play with it. It's a big toy in some ways. You can have fun showing all the
Yeah.
functionality to your friends over there. And for the price of so this is estimated 250 to 500. So is the Nostromo. But we've also got some smaller pieces. If you're a fan of the Black Hole, or you're a fan of Batteries Not Included, we've got some other model miniatures that are in the auction as well. But there's
a model
really
miniature
one of the
from
top.
Batteries Not Included. Is that what you just said? A model miniature from Batteries Not Included?
Yes, I think we've got that. We don't have it on screen out here, but you can take a look in the catalog.
I will definitely be doing all of that.
But anyway, so those are some. I saw in the corner there, we move on to Batman Returns. We've got a Penguin umbrella, which is kind of, this one doesn't spin around by itself, but you can spin it, with manual. And then we've got a little penguin down at the bottom. It makes a nice little display putting those two together. So if you're a Batman Returns fan versus the original 1989 Batman, we got some items for you.
Oh, and I can see a Batteries Not Included model just there.
Yeah,
I can just see it on the shelf.
Just creeping in.
An iconic one.
Yeah.
I tell you what, though, this movie, the '89 Batman movie, like as you rightly said, started it all. And I don't know if you know this in the States, but it was it had a bit of a cultural impact into the world of cinema in the UK, because it was the first ever 12 movie. Now, Brian and I, when it came out, would have only been 9 or 10 years old. There was some very much underage cinema viewing that happened in the late 80s in the UK. It absolutely reset everything. So we either had Universal for All, parental guidance, and then 15, and that seemed to be quite a leap. So to bring in this 12 rating that Batman got was it had such a cultural impact. How did you get to see it, Brian? Did you get a hooky video from a guy at the market, or did you have to sneak in?
No, my dad sneaked me in. So he was a good
under
lad.
his cape, maybe. Yeah.
He
just put you under his cape and brought you in. Yes,
that's about right. But yeah, let's talk about some other amazing things you've got on your table, Chuck.
Yeah, so we'll continue with Batman, going to more recent films, and although it's I think it's been like 8 to 10 years now since Batman versus Superman came out, I thought these are cool because we haven't typically offered these in the past. Starting with Batman's Batarang, you see this if you remember the original promo that came out for the movie. You see this sort of stuck in the wall, and that's the first sort of look at the quote unquote new Ben Affleck Batman that we had seen. And this is a very cool. You can hear that. That's actually made out of metal, so it's machined aluminum. And so this is a hero Batarang from Batman versus Superman. But what I also found cool about Batman versus Superman is you had other gadgets. For some reason, they decided, why not make 2 grapple guns instead of just 1 grapple gun? So, in Batman and Batman Returns, you had that classic one that you've seen. But here they decided to build 2 different versions, one with this wood-like handle and this one that's a little bit more mechanized that he uses throughout the film. So you got a chance to add both different types of grapple guns to your collection in this auction. And then I threw this one in from a Batman. Well, actually, this is before I go to that. This is also Batman versus Superman. So although most people don't necessarily remember, this was the very first appearance of Wonder Woman, and Gal Gadot made her appearance there. And this is the very first version of Wonder Woman's sword. They used a similar version of this as they progressed with Wonder Woman. The blade got a little bit longer. I think they experimented with her actually holding it and figured out what made sense, but it evolved from this one. So this is the very first one, made out of, it is cast. It is not actually made out of metal, although it looks very nice and it's got some wear and tear to it. But it's just a great selection of items. Now, this one's a little bit of an oddball. You guys have a guess as to what this is?
Oh, is that the end of the grapple gun? Was that instead of the 3-pronged trident hook that it used to have? Was that the end of the grapple gun, or have I completely got
not
that
quite? Wrong? No. I think there is an end of the grapple gun. Those are smaller little darts that you'll see, but nope. This is from the '89 Batman film. This is the very first Batarang that was introduced in the Michael Keaton film. But that being said, this is actually from the Flash movie. So when they brought Michael Keaton back in the alternate universe that is the Flash, they decided to bring back the original Batarang. And what's interesting is I've never actually seen a real Batarang from that '89 Batman. And the only replicas I saw were, if you looked at the back, this one is actually the same on the front and the back. the replicas that you used to see over at the conventions, it was flat on one side. So I've never actually seen one either on display at Warner Brothers or other places to know what the original looked like from '89. But as they did the Flash, you get one here, and it is complete on both sides. This one is made out of rubber, so actually it's not going to hurt anybody there. But interesting to see that sort of the homage to the '89 Batman in the newer Flash movie.
And those pieces from Batman versus Superman, are they
Yep.
screen used or are they production used? Because I know a lot of collectors will be asking those questions.
Yeah, those aren't, we don't exactly use that terminology as far as that. We do know they're from the production. Whether they're screen matched, we know they are not screen matched to a particular scene. So I guess in that regards, we know they're from the production, but we can't screen match them. Now, were they screen used? Were they with cutscenes? That we don't try to attribute to. So it just depends on what your definition is. But it doesn't, they're from the production. As I said, there's hero versions, there's rubber versions of the Batarangs that are out there. These are sort of the nicer versions of those ones that were out there.
Awesome. And then moving on, you've got a lovely hat there from
Yes.
and funnily
Fedora.
enough,
Yeah.
behind me, people that can see my screen, they can see an Indiana Jones behind me, and I've got a book by Vic Armstrong, who was the stunt double, and I've got his autograph there behind me as well, the greatest stuntman in the world, as he's referred
That's
to.
correct.
So tell us a bit about
Yeah.
that hat.
Well, very interesting story on the history of this hat. So people may know that we offered Vic Armstrong's stunt Indiana Jones jacket from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom in our previous auction. And as we were doing research on that jacket, what we had learned is that jacket had passed around and was worn by different actors. And Vic, I think, is credited as the primary stunt performer from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, but there were other stunt performers as well. And so when we saw the raft sequence, noticed that it had been worn by a different actor, a gentleman named Dean Ferrandini. And when we wanted to do research, and as part of our process is that we try to get as many behind the scenes photos as we can. So if we can't, the last part, if we can't screen match it to something that actually made it into the final cut, what we like to do is photo match it to existing photos that we're taking on the set or exist in some other form. So we reached out to say, hey, do you happen to have any other photos of being on set where you might have been seen with this jacket, so that we can give further evidence that it was on set. And unfortunately, we found out that Dean Ferrandini had passed away. And his widow, though, had mentioned that they had this hat, and we didn't know that this hat existed. And so this hat actually comes from the collection of Dean Ferrandini from his estate. And we knew it was obviously worn by Dean. It was worn in the raft sequence, so it did get wet in that sequence. And Dean was brought onto the film specifically for his skill to do this raft sequence, which I'm not sure if Vic can do it, but I believe it was in the US versus UK as well. And as we continued to research the hat, we had a lot of pictures of Dean, and with the lot comes a number of different photos such as this of Dean wearing the hat. So it was great to find these never before seen pictures of working on Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. But we also found, we also did more research to say, well, if Dean wore this, did anybody else, did Harrison Ford actually wear this hat as well? And as we went frame by frame within the film, we found that it actually matched to two different sequences where Harrison did wear it. One was in Sri Lanka when he first arrives in the town. And then also when he was filming in London at Elstree Studios, which is where they did the I believe the minecart sequence. So, and what makes it unique is when you look at these hats, the bow on the side of each of these Indiana Jones hats is slightly different. And so we're able to match to the wrinkles that are in there. We're also able to look at the stitching. And this is all because of 4K these days. You can get to this level of detail where you look at it. But this becomes really the Rosetta Stone, as you would say, of whether or not an Indiana Jones hat is screen matchable. And then as we looked on the inside, I won't go into all the details that make up an official Indiana Jones hat. But if you look, you can see here is the stamp for IJ. And it's also got the Herbert Johnson stamp on this side, which is the company that made these.
Wow.
And so, as folks may know, for the first Indiana Jones movie, they designed obviously his key costume. Anthony Powell redesigned, and Joanna Johnson redesigned the hat to make it a little bit more pointed, and some other, they tweaked a little bit of the hat design. But amazing piece, amazing history to this piece. And I don't know what you guys think.
So basically, you're telling me that you guys at Propstore are like real life Indiana Jones, searching after all these props, because the amount of research done into making these props credible is absolutely stunning. It really is. The amount of work that you put in, to get these, I just think are just breathtaking. It really is. But it's really iconic, isn't it? How like a costume like this, a hat, can be so recognizable to a franchise now that you see that hat and instantly, worldwide, Indiana Jones. It's just incredible.
Yeah. That's how I feel. I think, the hat, the whip, the jacket, all three are amazing pieces. And if you could own one of those pieces in your collection, you'd have a treasure in your hands. And I do think Indiana Jones stands the test of time. One of my favorite films. As I look at this auction, it has a special place. But then, I think there's, everybody's got their favorite, but Indiana Jones is one that I think at least those first three films will stand the test of time.
Definitely.
I don't know about the rest ones.
And it's a bit like Star Wars. And we're moving on to, again, an instantly recognizable piece. And I've been up close and personal with a TIE Fighter helmet that Propstore had on auction last November, I think it was, that went for an incredible price. Tell us a bit about the Scout. I can't even speak. The Scout biker helmet.
The Biker Scout. Yeah, the Biker Scout helmet. So this is from Return of the Jedi, the third movie in the original trilogy. This particular version was designed by Nilo Rodis Yamero, who was storyboard artist and other artist that worked in the Star Wars franchise. And it was supposed to be the continuation of what started with the Stormtroopers. It was sort of the evolution where they had the Snowtroopers in Empire. In Return, they decided they were going to move to the forest, and this was the version of the Stormtrooper that lived out in the forest or worked out in the forest. What's different about this design is a couple things. One, you'll notice that you've got these sort of blinder look to it, and part of the reason for the design that you've got here, it was actually designed based on a horse. As they thought about the bikers, the Biker Scouts, and what they would be doing is, you're going to be going 100 miles an hour through a forest, almost going to hit a tree everywhere you go. That's going to freak a person out if they're constantly looking at that. And so part of the design here was very practical to say, yeah, we're actually trying to hide those trees from their view and keep them focused on going straight ahead and not crashing into anything. So I thought that was brilliant. The second part of this is, and I don't necessarily want to touch it to do this, but this, the visor actually flips up. And that was the first time that they had done that. A typical Stormtrooper helmet, the Stormtroopers would lift it off their heads and you kind of have to move it sideways and then put it back on. And what they were finding as they were filming was this was adding a lot to production time, because all the Stormtroopers would get super hot during filming. And Lucas would be, he'd see all these Stormtroopers off to the side. They put all their helmets down all over the production, and then they'd have to go back, and then they'd have to put them exactly in the same places. And it was taking a lot of time. And so Nilo, when he was designing this, said, hey, I've got a solution for that. Why don't we just actually allow them to flip up, have their drink, and then put their mask back down, and that way they don't have to take it off, and they keep track of their helmets there. So great innovative design. Wow. One thing I'll point out as well is on the side of this, you'll see a sticker, and it looks like, this is the official Biker Scouts symbol, which I guess it became. But it was actually the person that actually made the helmets, or the lead, was Pete Ronzani. And if you look at that really closely, it's a P and an R sideways. And so it's his symbol, personal symbol, that got put onto the Biker Scout helmet to put his mark on the design of this particular helmet. But the other thing around this is that, unlike Stormtrooper helmets were made out of ABS plastic, these were actually painted. And so what the paint job on this will do is solidify the color. So if you've seen some Stormtrooper helmets, especially from A New Hope, some of them have yellowed over time. This is, I would say, bone white, but this is probably almost as white as it was the day that it was made, and it's held itself very well. It has been weathered, and that was part of the look of being out in the forest. But yeah, a little different from some of the other Stormtrooper builds there. But there's only, as far as we know, there's only 2 sort of out there outside of the archives that have sort of that are known at this point in time. This is the only one that's come to public auction. So given what you were saying about the TIE Fighter helmet, in some ways it's a special piece. You don't see as many of these as you do Stormtrooper helmets from either Jedi or from the original New Hope. So yeah, we expect this one will have a pretty big fan response.
When these get sold under the hammer, I always think to myself, I wonder where they are now. I wonder how they're displayed. I wonder what the owners are doing to them now, because these pieces are incredible, and I just hope that they're displayed with pride, which I'm sure they are, and not like sort of locked up in a vault somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, interestingly enough, before this came back to us, I don't know if folks know, Propstore has been sponsoring a exhibit over at the Reagan Library here. It's in Los Angeles, but right outside. And there's a large Star Wars exhibit that's going on to celebrate Ronald Reagan's Star Wars Defense Initiative, and they tied it into the actual film and sort of have items that are like missiles from back in the 1980s next to original Star Wars props. And this was one of the key items that was on display at there that Propstore sponsored and also sort of lent to the museum temporarily until we could bring it into our auction.
That is
now.
Great.
And so after our auction, somebody will take it home with them, but it is a museum-worthy piece and literally has been in a museum for the last few months.
That is fantastic to hear. And then moving on next to you, I think this sort of genre of film, I think is becoming bigger. On Prime, I was watching. I don't know if you've seen it yet. Those About to Die, with Anthony Hopkins. Which is a fantastic series, based around the same time as
Would you recommend it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I cannot wait for the props to come up. And you must get very excited when, films like this, they get a sequel, because Gladiator 2 is due to be released very, very soon. And looking at the film, it's as spectacular as the first one. So I'm sure that there are going to be lots of props and costume pieces to come from that film. But we're talking about the original now, which is an iconic film and an iconic costume piece right there.
Yeah, it's this is only a sampling of some of the Gladiator items. So again, if you go out to propstore.com, check out the catalog, you'll find some other pieces as well. But yeah, this is really the cream of the crop when you think about Gladiator. These are some of the top items that you would hope to own and can own, I guess, in the collection. So starting here, if you did see the Gladiator 2 preview or short that came out, this is actually not this particular sword, but a version of this sword is shown on the wall to show that this is Maximus's sword, and that Maximus in some ways is still alive, at least in people's hearts, and there's remembrances of that. So this is a hero version of the sword made out of aluminum. At least the metal part is. It's actually got some, if you can see, some little dents into that, which I believe were done on purpose. Yeah. But interesting story behind this is I believe they originally planned this to be a different character, which is why this is so ornate. And then they decided to change it, or Ridley Scott decided to change it, but ultimately gave this sword to Maximus, and it's become sort of the iconic. And I think the details at the end with the eagle at the bottom, which is just an amazing piece of detail, cast out of bronze. And then you've got the 2 smaller ones on the sides here. It's just a very different sword. I mean, I have, Conan's sword is always, to me, one of the ultimate movie swords. But I think for fans of Gladiator, this is probably up there with Conan's sword.
Yeah, this one's one of my absolute favorites, because there's something quite beautiful but also quite ugly about this sword. Like, it's quite stubby.
What's ugly about
short. The handle's brown, you know what I mean? But somehow it's so iconic and still so beautiful at the same time. It's not, like normally when the lead character will get a big, elongated, huge, beautiful,
Yeah.
handcrafted beauty
Yeah.
of a piece. This one's got a bit of bludgeon around it. You know what I mean? It looks
Yeah.
like it would come a bit keen to coin a British phrase.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, as you say, it is practical though, because if you're in hand-to-hand combat and you've got this shield here and you've got this sword, you don't want to have a super long sword that you're like 10 feet away from the other guy. It's almost like halfway between a knife and a sword, so that if you got to stab him and you're going to do it quick, and it's not going to take that long to do it. So, agree with you that it is kind of short and stubby. But it's practical. I mean, if you really think about it. And then going with that is the shield, which is also just this, not metal. You can kind of hear that flipping it around to the other side, but there is real leather work on here. It's even aged. You can see that, this was held. You can put your hands through it like this, hold that, but very practical. I love the design around here. It sort of tells a story, as in a lot of Roman art does. And I also love that there's a bit of scoring on here as well, which alludes to the fact that this was probably used on set, and probably the scoring came from either them practicing or actually hitting blows on screen with some of these things.
Do you know
So,
what? I love
a great
how
set
we've
if you can
gone
get both
from.
of them.
I love how we've gone from talking about props to self-defense advice from Chuck, which is great. So anyone out there that's got a gladiator sword, now you know how to defend yourself, and it's great. The detail on these costumes are immense, because when we was in London, we saw the Russell Crowe costume piece as well, and the amount of detail actually on there is just absolutely breathtaking. Which is beautiful.
Just beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. And I've seen some of the other gladiator suits too, and it's interesting that they add some of the details and some of these become a story of the gladiator's life in a way.
Yeah.
So these are their greatest battles, and you sort of read the story. So this is Commodus's armor, and it's even the lion details that are up there is just amazing. But I didn't realize until I looked at it, and that they had added, I think it's for Maximus's armor, or maybe it was another gentleman, but they added pieces to the story along the way as the movie progressed, which you didn't notice.
Wow.
But it's grazing. So having this Commodus's armor, this is Skeletorius, so a little bit more foreboding there. But take a look at the catalog. There's some great Gladiator things, as you say. Great timing. Gladiator 2 looks fantastic as far as production value. Ridley Scott. I can't say whether or not we're going to get any of the props from that anytime soon, but nothing better than having the original.
Exactly. And so far we've had Batman, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Gladiator, and then behind you we've got Star Trek, and there's so many Trekkies out there. And you mentioned at the beginning that you've got Star Trek items from the beginning to right up. Is there any pieces that you can talk about that you've got there?
Yes. So I think, and Charlie, I don't know if you want to get some close-ups here. I think the key piece is at the very top here, which is a Spock tricorder from the original series. This is from season 3. And next to it, you'll see a sketch. That is from Hua Chang. Hua Chang, for those that don't know, was the person that originally designed the tricorner. This is the original design sketch. So far, I haven't been able to find others out there. I assumed that there were multiple sketches, but I've only run across this one. Propstore sold it in the past, and then we were able to get it back. Ironically, independently. We didn't know we were getting the tricorder, but I think they make an amazing pair. But this is a season 3. Hua Chang made 2 original tricorders for season 1, and those were used throughout season 1 and season 2, and you'll see modifications of those throughout season 1 and season 2. By the time they got to season 3, the tricorder was a little bit beaten up, so they had to make 2 new heroes, and this is one of those 2. And what's a little bit different between the original tricorder and this one is that this one was wrapped in leatherette. I guess there was progress in the 1960s as far as cheaper materials that they could use. So this is wrapped in leatherette versus real leather. But amazing piece. We were able to, because there was only 2, you can screen match the which one is used by different people. This one was used by Spock, very rare to find tricorders. I think even in today's world, when they make Star Trek props, they don't make as many tricorders as they do phasers or other things that you can collect from Star Trek, because they're so intricate, and they're more difficult to make and more expensive, most likely. So they usually don't make many. But to have one of the, a handful that were made for the original series and it screen matches, is pretty amazing. And I would get the sketch. If you buy this, get the sketch to go along with it. I think they just make an amazing combo.
I mean, would
My
you
plea to
say?
whoever's going to buy this.
Yes, yes. Get it as a pair. You don't walk
Get it as
out
a pair.
with one puppy. You need both of them. But with these props, would you say that they put more effort into them back in the day compared to now, or would you say it's different?
Oh, I think it's just different. I think they put a lot of effort into this one. So there's some people call them memory banks. There's a cylinder that's in there that's been scored, and I think they put a lot of work into creating that. And I think that's, you think about it, this looks a lot like a Watchman. Did you have a Watchman back in the 80s?
Yeah,
If you were rich,
yeah.
you could watch a TV anywhere you wanted. I mean, they basically made a Watchman back in the 1960s. Wasn't fully functional at the time, but they put a lot of time and effort into it. I believe the lights at the top are actually watch crowns, so they would find things. And I find prop masters nowadays do the same thing. They always have their eyes out when they go to like a thrift store. They're always looking for unique items that they can repurpose and turn into props, which is what I sort of look at here. They're like, hey, how can I make that? What can I borrow? What can I steal to do that? I think today is just more industrialized. I think you've got things made out of different materials where they were making things with leatherette. I mean, I think you'd probably find some different substances that they use today, but it's an amazing, and it's heavy. I mean, it's what you want it to be. It feels like a true device as you're carrying it around. So
I mean, it's
love
really
that
nice
piece.
to see the quality of it as well, because back then TV wasn't that great of a picture. So,
Yeah.
there are certain shows out there that may not have made that much of an effort on their props because of the screen. And now we're seeing everything in 4K. So these prop masters have got to really work really hard to make everything look so much more convincing. How hard was it to actually screen match something like this compared,
Yeah, tell
with
us
the
about that
screen
process.
image compared to 4K?
I mean, it's still, even with television the way that it is, it's very grainy. I guess the good thing about these tricorders in some ways is that there are tells, like on this. If you look at the season 1 tricorders versus the season 3 tricorders, the colors of the lights, alleged lights at the top, are different. So the originals were blue. These have 3 different colors. We really just have to look for things. And I think if you go online, you can see our screen matching techniques on this, is to look at the folds and just the way that as the leatherette was wrapped around this, what did it create, and where can we see that? The good thing about Spock and things that you take for granted, most of the characters, when they carry a tricorder, are looking at the tricorder themselves. They're looking at the screen. So you actually do not see the details of the screen because they are looking at it.
Yeah.
Leonard Nimoy, to his credit, was one of the only people that decided to say, when I read this, I'm going to read it to the audience so that they can see all the beautiful detail of the tricorder. And I think that helped in this case to make it easier for us to screen match this particular one.
That is fantastic.
So thank you, Leonard Nimoy, for doing that.
Yeah, of course, an absolute legend. And you've got pieces from all 4 corners of Star Trek, and it keeps going with the new section 31, I think it is, which is the new series that's
They will,
coming out. But you've got props from all sides of the industry, from the Goonies to Evil Dead. So we want everyone to get onto the website right now, propstore.com. Get on there. Check it out from the 15th to the 18th of August. Get on there and get bidding. How easy is it to register? What's the process?
Well, I think you can go online, you fill out a form. If you register for us before for an auction, it's a little bit easier. But if you're going for the first time, just go and fill in your information. We do ask for a credit card, but if you also want to have somebody walk you through it, the gentleman that was helping us with the Batwing, Ryan, here in the Los Angeles office, will be happy to walk you through the registration process and make it as easy as possible for you.
And
good old Ryan, he sounds like a great guy, doesn't he? He's got
Ryan
every
is
job
really
going
a great
at
guy.
this place.
Yeah. Ryan is amazing. He doesn't get a lot of, we don't talk about Ryan enough. So I want to make sure this podcast is about Ryan.
Yeah, the Ryan Appreciation Society.
Yes.
That's what we're going to start. But it is easy to bid, because I bid on a few pieces on the Expanse auction earlier on in the year. I missed out. I got outbidded I was gutted, but I will keep
Ugh,
on trying. But Chuck, thank you so much for coming on to the show and giving us a
my pleasure.
preview of some of these amazing things. I'm sure Dan is going to get his wallet out and start thinking about what he's going to spend his hard-earned money on. But
Yeah.
Chuck, look after yourself, keep safe, and stay super, my friend.
All right. Thanks, guys. We appreciate it. And everybody else, keep keep the hope alive.
Cheers,
Live long
Chuck.
and